Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. Now in this episode, I'm going to go back and revamp one of my first episodes. When I first started YouTube, I didn't know the guidelines or how it worked, so I'm going to go back and recap on this one. In this episode of Warren Cali, I'm going to discuss the Black P Stones, also known as BPS, and their ally, the Rollin 20 Bloods, versus the Rollin 30 Crips, the Rollin 40 Crips, and the 18th Street Gang. Black P Stones have two different main cliques, the Biddy and the Jungles. The BPS identity started around the late 1960s when T. Rogers brought the name to that community from Chicago. They would start to be established by 1969, and BPS would join the Blood Alliance in the 1970s. The Jungles hail from the Baldwin Village area, which you may know for seeing in Denzel Washington's movie, Training Day. Now the Biddy Stones, they're more located in the West Adams district and have several streets they claim in that area. Now BPS has many Crip rivals. They beef with hoods like the Schoolyard Crips, the West Boulevard Crips, the Rollin 30s, and the Rollin 40 Crips, among many other gangs. Black P Stones also beef heavy with Hispanic gang, 18th Street. Now their allies, the Rollin 20 Neighborhood Bloods, also located in the West Adams district. The Rollin 20s originated in the 1970s and later became one of the largest blood gangs in LA. Now the Rollin 20s have a few nearby allies like BPS, especially the Biddy with them being in close proximity, and the Fruittown Brims, which is now becoming a gentrified set off USC and the city trying to take over their community. They also have a lot of rivals nearby too, like the Rollin 30s and the Rollin 40s, and also the Schoolyards. The Rollin 20s have basically the same rivals and allies as BPS. Now let's get into some of their rivals. The Rollin 30s, also known as the original Harlem Crips, are dirt gang. The 30s history dates back decades, and they're one of the largest and most long-lasting gangs in South Central. The 30s are a rare Crip gang in South Central that claim Rollin, but are not a part of the neighborhood Crip car like many others, but they're allies to gangs that claim the neighborhood car. The 30s beef with hoods like BPS, Rollin 20 Bloods, the Brim sets, and the Hoovers, just to name a few. Last Crip set I'm gonna mention is the Rollin 40 Crips. The Rollin 40 Crips are neighborhood Crips and have been around for decades, and so has their rivalries with other gangs like BPS, the Rollin 20s, the Trouble Gangster Crips, and the Hoovers. Even though the Rollin 40s are neighborhood Crips and are in a Rollin Alliance as well, the 40s have even had past flare-ups with allies like the Rollin 30s and the Rollin 60 Crips. Now the last gang I'm gonna mention is the 18th Streets. In the 1970s, the Hispanic community was only about 17% compared to now, which is around 40 to 50 range. With more Hispanics moving in areas that was once almost all black, some area relations between the two races were on good terms or cordial. But around the 80s, some communities developed rivalries. 18th Street has many different cliques and became one of the biggest Hispanic gangs in LA County, and also in many other places outside of LA. It is said 18th Street tried to set up shop in BPS's turf in the 90s, which caused a major issue, which has been going on for years. With the Rollin 20s, it is believed the 18th Street member took the life of a 20 Blood, which put them at odds with both sets. But with that being said, let's get into some cases. September 24th, 2006, Caesar arrived at his home around 2:45 p.m. with his two daughters. They were both in the back seat of his car. As Caesar stepped out of his car, our car pulled alongside of him and car yelled out, "This is 18th Street," and Black P Stone was yelled after. The passenger of the car then pulled out a strap and shot at Caesar. Caesar began to run, and they fired more shots at him, which he was shot and collapsed. Larry and Jonathan from BPS were the driver and the shooter. Jonathan then ran back and opened Caesar's back seat and shot inside the car at his young daughters. He then jumped back in the car with Larry, and they drove away. One of Caesar's young daughters would lose her life. September 29th, 2006. A BPS member who had nothing to do with this case was arrested on a separate charge. He started snitching and told the police what Larry and Jonathan did. He said Jonathan called him and said what he did and how he did the shooting. Snitch later denied this and said he never said any of this and tried to retract his statements. But with many witnesses and Caesar giving his account at trial, both Larry and Jonathan received life. March 2nd, 2008. Jamel was walking from the bus stop 3 blocks away from his home. He was on the phone with his dad. As Jamel kept walking, our car pulled up and asked Jamel what gang he was from. It was believed Jamel was from 20s. He was then shot multiple times, taking his life. Jamel's dad then drove to the scene, being on the phone with his son, hearing everything. The person who shot Jamel was a gangbanger named Pedro from 18th Street. Jamel came from a good family with both parents who were working people. He was a football player who was said to have a bright future on his hands. A lot of people made it seem like Pedro targeted a civilian, but many pictures later surfaced of Jamil what appearing looks like him gangbanging and him being a blood. Pedro was later arrested and later sentenced. He was sentenced to death. He is currently at San Quentin State Prison. On May 8th, 2009, Rosa and her boyfriend Luis were parked in their car talking to their neighbor Kenneth. A black car will pull up with 3 men and started shooting. Kenneth ducked and was missed. Luis got shot in the arm, but Rosa wasn't so lucky. She was shot multiple times and lost her life. Police believe because they were in 18th Street's turf, this was the possible motive for catching the 18th Street member, and BPS was on the hunt. Police went searching for the car in BPS's turf and found it at a gas station. All the people in the car will be detained. Joel and Eric will be arrested, and their homes were later searched where police found things to match them to the crime. Louise will later pick Joel and Eric as doing the shooting. Louise later testified at trial. Joel and Eric both refused to go to court, and at trial Joel wouldn't speak to the judge. The judge ordered Joel to speak, and he said, "Why? You already going to give me life." And that's exactly what he did. Joel and Eric both received life. Giovanni was from Rollin 20 Bloods, but he lived in BPS's turf. He was sitting outside his apartment with his girlfriend when a man named James pulled up and parked his car. A woman named Deanna, who James was waiting for, came out of her apartment and went to James's car. Giovanni told his girlfriend to talk to James and see who he was. James started flirting with Giovanni's girlfriend when she told him Giovanni was her boyfriend. By this time, Giovanni went up to the car and asked James where he was from. James knew he messed up. He hesitated and said, "I'm from 40s. Giovanni responded and said, "This 20 Bloods," and pulled out a strap and then started firing multiple times. He then ran away, taking James' life. Giovanni's girlfriend would later throw the strap in a bush, and she was later arrested that night and got charged with accessory. But she told everything for a reduced sentence of 15 months. Giovanni was charged and received 50 years to life for his part in the crime though. 2010, Charles and 3 other 30 Crips were at a party in their hood. Around 3 a.m., BPS members will come through and the 30 Crip will be shot. Plotting revenge, Charles and his crew went to BPS turf looking to catch somebody slipping. Around 4:30 a.m., they seen 2 men, Jack and O. Jack was wearing a St. Louis Cardinals hat, known to be worn by BPS members. Charles and his crew pulled up and said, "Where y'all from?" Before they could respond, the 30 members just drove away. Before they knew it though, 3 people approached Jack and O from behind and pressed him. Jack and O would say that they didn't bang, but the 30s wouldn't believe him. All the 30s said was, "Let's do this," and started shooting. Jack would lose his life and O would be grazed. Charles was placed to the crime because he had an ankle monitor on that tracked his every move. He would make matters worse when he was in jail, and he ordered the 30s to take out another member who was in on the crime. Police called Charles the ringleader, so Charles received 40 years to life. Ricky was from BPS. He was dating a woman named Rhonda. Wasan was from Rollin 30 Crip, and he was friends with Rhonda. Wasan lived in BPS's turf. February 2011, Ricky and another BPS member went to Wasan's door and asked him was he from 30s, but a security guard came and stopped the situation before it started. Days later, Wasan seen Ricky and called him out to run a fade. Ricky turned it down and ran away. Wasan later told Rhonda what happened. Days later, Wasan and Rhonda would link. The whole time, it was a setup. Rhonda opened Wasan's sliding door when he wasn't looking. Ricky and 2 other masked men ran into Wasan's apartment and they started putting hands and feet on Wasan. Wasan ran and Ricky fired 5 shots, striking him. Ricky and his crew then took computers and phones and left. Wasan later told the police everything and how Rhonda set him up. She was detained and messages showed her and Ricky planned it all. Ricky received 40 years to life for his part in the crime, and Rhonda only got 6 months on ankle monitor. January 9th, 2017, Peter from BPS and 2 other men from BPS was riding around, and Peter was in the back seat. Around 10 p.m., they was driving through 40 Crips turf, where they seen DH from 40s, who was sitting outside of a store on Vernon and Western with another 40 member. The 40 members threw up their set at the BPS's car, which the car stopped, and Peter hopped out and walked up on the 40s. The 40s then tried to run. Peter started shooting DH multiple times. The whole time, police was sitting in an unmarked car on the same street, and they heard 5 shots. They seen only 1 car on the street, and it was the BPS's car. Police chased the BPS members all the way back to their hood, where Peter jumped out and tried to run, but he was later caught. Peter admitted to doing the shooting and shooting DH. He said they had an altercation before in jail, and he wanted to get him out the way. Peter received 25 years to life for the shooting. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.